so I love movie day.
Yep, I love movie day. We just saw Renfield. This review is like a week late. We were going to see it last week, but our local movie theater does a discount day, and we were just busy that day, and we couldn't make it by the final showing, so we decided to do a twofer this week.
Sure.
And I was actually like really worried. I almost wanted to see it last week on Tuesday at full price, on the basis that it got, I don't know if it got bad reviews, but it did horrible box office. Like, it just huge bomb. And
right.
The fear was they're going to remove it from theater because we don't have a big theater in town, and we only have one theater in town. Like, you have to go pretty far to another theater. So my fear is that, like,
it was going to get pulled.
It was going to get pulled in 1 week, and we weren't going to get a chance to see it. So I was really happy that that didn't happen. We got to see the film because it's one of the best films that I have seen.
Great.
In a while. Like, it's not a perfect film.
No.
And I will also say, like, I'm not so sure if you're familiar with the whole idea of the dark universe idea that Universal's been pushing. I will get into that in a minute.
Sure.
And I don't know if you're looking for that, if this is the movie you're looking for. Mm. However, what I will say is they tie it into the original 30s Universal films.
They do, which I love.
I love it.
I even loved that they kind of like CGI'd him in there.
Yes.
And that they didn't, like, I loved it. I loved that they did the old black and white throwback.
Right. Like, this feels like a direct sequel to 1930s Todd Browning's Dracula.
Yeah.
With Bela Lugosi, for those who are not familiar with Todd Browning's work. But this is a very interesting film. However, I feel like even though it's designed to be a direct sequel to that, it doesn't keep any of the same tone. And like, there's...
Oh gosh, no.
Well, we'll get into it in a minute. Like, I don't want to get into the specific details because I want to have like a spoiler section later.
Right. Where you can cut off if you haven't seen it.
Sure. But what I will say is it's hysterical. It is one of the funniest, campiest films if you like horror movies. But I also will say, like, if you just have a dark and morbid sense of humor, it's not scary at all.
No.
It's what I would call like a goth comedy.
Yeah, because like I don't like horror film at all, but I do like let's say Beetlejuice, Zombieland, other kind of very hilarious scary movie-ish type films. Sure. And this one was, even from the beginning, I was like, no, I definitely want to see this because Nicolas Cage, when he puts on that like campy demeanor, is just hilarious.
Well, I think part of the problem is Nicolas Cage because, like, let's be honest, he's been in some stinkers lately.
Oh yes.
Like, he apparently, and I don't want to get into too much detail because I don't know the details and I'm not there, but apparently he had a spending issue. Where, like, he was, like, buying castles that were medieval, like, kitschy things, and, like, he owned, like, really rare comic books that he paid millions for. And, like, he was buying, like, period suits of armor that would cost, like, $70,000, $80,000. Like, he had a spending problem. And then he hit bankruptcy, and essentially what happened after bankruptcy is that he couldn't say no to a role. Which was weird for a bit because, like, he went through all of these horrible, horrible films, and, like, he did, I think, probably the best with the time and budget given.
Sure.
But when you're not giving good material, and you kind of ham it up, and you're trying to save the film by being, Nicolas Cage, because that's essentially what
that's the draw.
Right, so, like, you're a guy, and you've only got enough money to pay Nicolas Cage, who won't say no to your, paltry offer, and you're like, you Nicolas Cage.
Yes.
And, like, I feel like he did that for so long that he, like, I think people wrote him off. He's done a couple of things lately that people like, which I haven't seen, like the things that people have recently liked, because, as I said, like, I don't really watch current films as much. I know that his Herzog film of the Bad Lieutenant remake was astounding, which was during that period of time. And, like, it's not that he can't do good work. Everybody always thinks about the Leaving Las Vegas, era. Nicolas Cage, which, is an excellent film if you haven't seen it. But this is a very self-aware and even contained zany. Like, it's not, like, over the...
It's not over the top, Like, it's just, like, what they did it really well. Where they didn't undersell it, but they didn't oversell it either. Like, it's just campy enough.
It's campy fun, but it's contained, and it's in control, and it's
hilarious.
It's a very funny film.
It really is.
Like, it's also got, from my Parks and Recs, if you can't tell, we're fans, like John Ralphio's character. I don't know his name in real life. I always think of him as John Ralphio from Parks and Rec. But he plays John Ralphio in every role. Like,
that is who he is.
Yeah, that's who he is. And he's, like, the kitschiest, like, it's, like, from the iconography, it looks like a Russian mafia family in New Orleans, which I don't know why the Russian mob is in New Orleans.
Who knows?
None of this makes sense. But, like, the mother is a really famous Arab actress, and then he's a Jew, and it's like, huh? Like, okay, like, it's one of those movies where the suspension of disbelief, like, at no point is this supposed to be real. So, I didn't give a shit that, like, because, like, I find the mother of the actress, I don't know her name, really, I liked her work for some time. I've liked his work. Like, the fact that you're just getting people I like on screen is really what this movie's about. Like, at no point am I like, that's not how the Russian mob works. No. This is not the movie for you if that's where you're at. Like, this is...
Well, I mean, and then, like, the Renfield scenes.
Right.
Like, the power, power-ups.
That was the only scenes I didn't like.
I was going to say, like, they go way overboard.
Right.
Like, again, you can't think to yourself,
right,
that's the way that reality would work if, power-ups were a thing. Yeah.
Right. I want to touch on those in a second, because that's actually my least favorite parts of the film. But overall, it's entertaining from start to finish. It is my favorite of the Universal films that have been made really since, I want to say, 79's Dracula, which is dubbed Sexy Vampire, or Sexy Dracula.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. It was the first time they really made vampires sexy. I can't remember the name of the actor. I can see the guy's face. He played Skeletor in the Dolph Lundgren He-Man.
I got nothing.
I can't think. Langella. Something Langella. Fuck me. Anyways, it's late. It's a midnight showing. We're doing the review after, so I'm a little tired. Frank Langella. That's his name. Anyhow.
Yeah. Well.
But no, like
it's great from beginning to end.
Yeah, like they've been trying to redo the Universal properties at Universal for forever, and they have had one suckfest after another. Like, really, they have just bombed hard one after the other. I heard the recent Invisible Man was decent. However, it's like a feminist, like, bullshit where, like, the man is, like, oppressing the woman because he's a rapist now. This got released during COVID.
Oh, then I didn't see that one. I saw the one previous to that. Who was it Kevin Bacon who was Invisible Man?
See, here's the thing.
That's the last one I saw.
But that was done at Sony. So it wasn't done as a true legacy at Universal. Though it's funny, like, we say legacy because, like, when you think Dracula, Frankenstein, Invisible Man, like, all of these are... Yeah, like the werewolf legend, like, none of this is copyrightable.
Correct.
Right? Like there have been countless werewolf movies. There's been countless Dracula movies.
Right.
You right now can go on your iPhone and make a Dracula movie, and no one will sue you. I find that really interesting that Universal, when you think of Universal, you think of the monster movies because you do. Like, they're very famous, and it's really the Universal branding. Back in the day, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but like, the different studios would own their own movie theaters.
Right.
And every studio kind of had a thing that they sold. So that, like, if you liked horror movies, you would go to the Universal Theater to see the Universal movies.
Right.
Whereas, like, Warner did the crime movies, and like somebody else did more of the westerns, and like each studio kind of had their niche because that they were trying to get the same audience back over and over and over again. So Universal was known as, like, the Monster Studio, which, like, they've kind of, for their legacy, kept.
Sure.
And they keep trying to go back to these things, which is funny to me because, like, when you think of Dracula movies post-Bela Lugosi, you think of the Hammer films.
Right.
And then you think of Interview with the Vampire, which is over at Warner. Like they had the Langella film, and I believe it was 79. sexy Dracula. And then you have, but like when I think of like vampire movies that have been made, post Dracula, like I don't think of anything at Universal. The same is true of like Wolfman movies. Like there have been a few werewolf movies that have been decent, but none of them were done at Universal. The only thing that Universal did was that really bad The Wolfman in like 2011.
I don't even think I saw it.
Oh, I saw it in theaters. I fell asleep. It was one of the few movies that I legit like.
Not at all.
I nodded off because I was on a date and the girl wanted to go see it, so she dragged me in. I'm like, it's a horror movie, it'll be fine. And like, it was like a double date, it was like a group of us.
Yeah.
And I felt like I literally fell the fuck asleep during the movie. And like it was funny because there was like the dude who was like somebody else's date that was there who I just thought was this dumb motherfucker.
Okay.
He was just dumb as a rock. And like, I woke up from the movie at the end. And like right as the credits were rolling, somebody nudged me awake, and like this fat fuck was like, "I loved it. It was the best thing I've ever seen." And I'm like, "I'm so glad I slept through it." Like it was whatever. And then like, but like you go through like the Creature movies, like the Creature of Black Lagoon, they've been remade elsewhere.
Right.
Frankenstein better done elsewhere. Like Universal hasn't had a good monster movie in a really long time, and they've tried because. So if you're unaware, like the Dark Universe has been trying to, hit off at Universal for some time now. So the idea of bringing them back. So the first one was the Wolfman, which we just talked about, and then they did Dracula Untold, which was a really weird telling of Vlad the Impaler as Dracula.
Yeah.
Do you remember that movie?
I saw it, and to be honest, I wasn't...
You don't remember much from it. Like,
no, I wasn't impressed.
Right, because the original Bram Stoker, he heard kind of the legend and kind of built that in a little bit.
It felt very shoehorned.
It was in the original book. So, like, what they did is they took 90% of Vlad the Impaler history, which has been sanitized because you can't make fun of the Muslims. You can't talk about like the Muslim scourge and how many of the Christians they were massacring.
Right.
You can't talk about any of that. So you can't really add drama to the defending Christian, like, what Vlad was doing, or like, and they don't even get to like how just ruthless and brutal and like.
Yeah, I mean, that happens a lot with history now. Is very much
we sanitize the shit out of it.
Yeah, we change history to fit the present, not the other way.
The best Vlad story from history is like he would do negotiations over dinner, like with the opposing generals. So he would invite them to dinner, and he would have prisoners on poles above the dinner, bleeding and screaming over the table. Yeah.
That's one negotiating strategy.
Yeah, but like the dude sliding down the pole throughout the dinner.
That's awful.
Yeah, he's a harsh dude.
Yeah, no kidding.
But anyways,
so you can't talk about any of that.
Oh no, that's never going to make a movie. It should. If you're going to make a Dracula prequel, just dude sliding down poles needs to be in your script. But anyhow, like they do the Vlad historical epic. And then he's about to lose a crucial battle, so he sells his soul.
Right.
And it's kind of like, well, if you sell your soul to the devil for a good reason, you become a superhero. And then he basically becomes a swarm of bats and takes over the horde of people, and then we're like up to in that bomb. And then
it doesn't even make sense. Like
it doesn't.
How do you? Yeah, no. You sell your soul to the devil and become a good superhero. Like that doesn't track.
No, not at all. He's cursed to do this thing, but he didn't want to because he's a really good, swell guy.
Well, what is it? It's the guy on the motorcycle that turns into flame.
Ghost Rider.
It's the Ghost Rider trope.
Yeah.
Well, like, I'm cursed, but I do it for a good cause.
Yeah. Bullshit. Here's the thing, like just before we get into the movie or anything else, because we're getting a little bit off, but like if you're doing something horrible for a quote-unquote good reason, you need to reevaluate your life as though you're a bad person.
Yeah.
Like you really do. Like you need to look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm doing bad things and I'm justifying it in my own mind because I'm a piece of shit. So, self, you piece of shit, you. How do you fix this?
Yeah.
That's
not selling your soul to the devil.
Yeah.
That's never the answer. I can guarantee you.
101.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, never the answer. On multiple choice, it's never sell your soul.
Yeah, never sell your soul. No, never. The devil will never make you the superhero.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. Other three options, you can take it as you will, but definitely not that one.
That's the answer.
That's the answer for that.
But no, so like they did that one, and then they did that horrible Tom Cruise mummy movie.
Oh gosh.
Which bankrupted like the entire sub studio that they had to make these. So yeah, like Universal is just like.
But this one.
Well, then they did the Invisible Man one as a they loaned it out to Blumhouse.
Right.
To do this one where I didn't see it, so I'm not going to harsh on it too bad. But it's like the whole plot was like men preying on women and like the patriarchy. And I'm like, I don't need to see that. Like, and everyone's like, it's so bright. I don't need to see that.
Regardless,
the victim's the hero. Fuck, I don't know. It's about the pathos of the person losing his mind and losing his morals. That you actually start with a moral person. Because here's the idea of the Invisible Man is actually the antithesis and like answer to what we just said about Dracula. Because you have a scientist, who sets out to do something wonderful to make a thing for society, and because our heart is evil, once he gets there, he thinks he's going to do wonderful things with this power,
and he does.
Once he gets the power, he's no longer good, and he falls to the dark side, which is exactly what would happen to Dracula. So there is no like in a moral world, in a real world, there is no like I am the cursed hero.
Right, no. It was I lost my mind, I lost my morals, I lost my
soul.
I lost my soul, which is kind of
right.
I mean that you want to see that.
You want the pathos of that detriment, and that is what the Invisible Man is. I think there is ultimately, like you talk about me because we'll get into this later, but I don't like Harry Potter or like things that glorify, other faiths and other moral standpoints. And you're like, well, how do you watch horror movies? And I'm like, well, the difference is yes, there's horrible things in horror movies, but there's also horrible things in life. The difference is in horror movies, the horrible things aren't glorified.
Sure.
Like at no point do you want to, run off and become a possessed thing or a zombie. Like, you understand why these things are evil, and they're meant as social commentary. You're trying to overcome the evil.
Sure.
Whereas in, Harry Potter, you want to be the wizard, you want to be the witch, you want to, make a pact and, get power.
Sure.
So, that's my answer to that. But getting back to Renfield, so the fact that you actually go back and make a reference to the 30s films. Well,
yeah, I mean, it actually talks about... That's actually one of my favorite parts about the movie is that it actually gives the full dialogue of Renfield from the 30s, which is, he was a lawyer, he was trying to make a deal, and...
Sure.
All the things. And I kind of like that they made it very pointed in that I did not trick you. You were not tricked. You wanted this.
Here's the thing. I don't know if I believe Dracula, who is the stand-in for the devil. I don't know if I believe when the devil says I didn't trick you or I didn't use my powers, because he very well might have. Like you don't trust him to say that he's telling the truth then.
Sure, but my point was going to be is that it's a very look yourself in the mirror.
Sure.
Why were you here? Even if I was able to trick you, I was only able to trick you because you put yourself in a position to be taken advantage of.
Sure.
Had you not tried to do something greedy or do something untoward or get one over on somebody, you would not have been in this position.
Sure.
So the fact that you are now victimized... You allowed yourself. And I like that they made that very... They tried to not make it pointed. Like you said, well, the devil's the one who's saying it. In this case, Dracula. But when I saw that, I was like, I really hope that people think about that. I really hope that people really think, did I put myself in a position to be taken advantage of? Because I very well could have walked away.
It's not that you didn't deserve it, but you definitely put yourself in a vulnerable position. I think that's a very... good thing victims need to ask themselves. Because, I always have this thing, and people always say I'm blaming the victim, but there is a idea which I've taken for myself, which is ultimate responsibility. Good, bad, or otherwise, I earned it. If something bad happened, it's because I did things to get to that bad outcome, and ultimately because I am in control of myself and am responsible for myself and everything that happens, anytime you have a negative outcome, you need to learn how you got there to overcome it and not just be a victim, quote unquote. That you take responsibility.
It's a tricky rope to walk, especially in this societal, whatever, because people are very quick to say, well, you're blaming the victim. And it's like, no, I'm not blaming the victim. What I'm saying is, if you see a dark, scary alley with no lights, a bunch of glass bottles, and you're walking barefoot, and
in a hooker costume,
and somebody chases you,
drunk,
and somebody chases you and mugs you and beats you up, well, maybe you shouldn't have been barefoot, drunk, in a hooker costume, walking down a dark alley where there's broken bottles at 2 a.m, and then crying at the hospital because your feet are all cut up and you're beaten. Like, maybe you should have called a cab.
Sure. Like there's just ways to be, consider yourself. And I also think that, like, a lot of women in modern culture, they're always trying to, like, blame men and say we're the oppressors, but I also feel like we're also the natural defense against other men. So, like, at some point in your life as a woman in maturity is to seek out, at a young age, a good protector male who will take care of you. Because you and the kids, like, I'm very watchful and I'm very, considerate of that.
Well, we've talked about this before. Like, there's only so many places and roles that I can be fulfilling, like, at the same time. Right. So, like, I can't be in 2 places at the same time. I can't be doing 2 vastly different tasks. I mean, multitasking, cooking and talking or whatever, like that, but you can't be protecting somebody and cooking and cleaning and watching people outside and, like, all the things at the same time. Like, you need somebody to protect others while there's somebody else doing something else. Like,
Sure. So, like, but back to my point, I think the fact that this is a direct sequel is the only way that, because here's the thing, if you did a generic Dracula movie, nobody gives a shit that it's from Universal.
No.
Because, like the thing is 2 other studios can do Dracula films, and nobody is really doing Dracula films except for Universal, because nobody cares about Dracula films.
Nobody really cares about Dracula films, and actually I kind of like that it's specifically about Renfield. Right. I loved
You found a niche character.
Yeah, but I loved the dialogue. I loved the over talking. What do you call it when you're the narrating? Right. I loved the narrating.
No, I thought it was really good. The only thing that I didn't like about the narration is they go out of their way to make the Dracula character in this film be a direct stand-in for codependency and narcissism and bad relationships. Yeah. So, like here's my only negative with that. I don't think it's bad on its face. Sure. Because that's definitely something that I'm not, get information out, find healthy relationships, don't be taken advantage of, all the things. However, I feel like now we have to specify so completely that I feel like you demystify things, because when you have something that was as open-ended as the original monster films, there's a lot of interpretation, there's a lot of things. Right. There's a lot of allegories and analogies that you can make with these characters and these setups and what monsters are in people's lives. So yeah, of course you can make an abusive relationship the whatever character, but you can also make it the vice that has control over you or whatever else. And in this one you can't. Like, it is one allegory, it has one thing that it's meant to be, and that's it.
But I think that's really indicative of how the audience have changed. Like, audiences now really don't want to have theological discussions. Like, for example, the original Frankenstein book was it had a lot to say about society, relationships, and it just did. It was very deep, and it had a lot of things to say, and it really isn't a big book. It's very small. Sure. And really, today's audiences want it as concise and simple as possible. Just give me the one thing. I only want to think about the one thing. I don't want subplots and things going on in the background. I don't want Casablanca, where there's a million different things in the background.
Funny, when you talk about, like, the original Frankenstein films, which we really need to hone this back, but, like, the Frankenstein films are really James Whale's, the director and writer for those films, and his interpretation the Shelley works. But to get back into this is, cocaine jokes, hookers, like everything that you can think of as wild, like, John Ralphio as a Russian mobster and
chucking cocaine bags at police officers was hilarious.
Yeah, what was his line when he said, that's not mine?
That's not mine. I don't even know, but I just remember like the bag exploding and the police officer going, "Oh my God, it's cocaine!"
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, it was hysterical.
Oh, it's funny. It's raunchy. It's everything that you could think of a parody of like the underbellies of society, where you would imagine. It's someone really, like, it's taking the original Dracula, looking at, like, the interview, movies, like, the Anne Rice books, and just poking at them.
Oh my gosh.
Like, this is, we're just going to, like, you don't take yourself too seriously.
Yeah, full-on comedy.
Yeah. I mean, like, the funniest thing to me that we were laughing about after the thing is they make a purity circle to, like, trap Dracula, which normally, in everything I've ever seen or whatever in lore, it's salt because of purity.
Right.
They make it out of cocaine.
Yes, and I love that the actress was like, I guess you can make a purity circle out of anything as long as you say the right words.
Right.
Like, what? Yeah. It was hilarious.
Yeah, it was just pushing boundaries and whatever. The one thing I didn't like, and I feel like, the allegory, simplification is one. But the only other thing that I didn't really like, that didn't land for me, is the on-wire fighting.
Yeah, the power-up... Well, the power-up pills in general were just gross. Like, the fact that, like, insects were
that's part of the Renfield thing. I was bought in before I got in, because that's even in the commercials, and maybe that turned people off. It didn't bother me. And I will say that, like, the over-the-topness is funny. Like, pulling people's arms off, like... Oh my God,
beating people with pulled-off arms is hilarious.
It's funny. But there's something about that wire work as, like... I don't know, like, I feel like for me personally, also hitting a guy and making him cough up his intestines while shitting himself, one of the best things ever.
I mean, the fact that they, like, did the x-ray, like,
so you could see that it's his shitting himself, yes. It's astounding. So, like, I don't even want to complain about it too hard, it's just that, like, I feel like that style of fighting, where we're just going to overpower someone for a reason we're not going to explain.
Right.
It started with Buffy in my mind.
Oh yeah.
And because the moment Buffy starts fighting, I tune out, and it's all supposed to be an allegory for like empowerment, but like they empower women by giving them unattainable things that they can't actually have. So your power is this bullshit thing we've made up that you need to really hold on to. And like, I feel like they do this for all sorts of things. So like, if you buy into the allegory that Renfield has this deep thing where like he has to overcome his codependency, his power to overcome his codependency is bullshit.
Well, I mean, I really thought it was hilarious when he pulls out the book and starts reading. Oh,
yeah, no, that's funny.
The book. Well, because the whole point was, I have the power. Like, I have the power, and the only reason...
Instead of a Bible, it's a self-help book.
Yeah, and, like, the only reason that Dracula is powerful is because Renfield has the power, which, again, from an allegorical standpoint, doesn't make sense, because if you're talking about, specifically, the allegory of codependency relationships, where one person greatly overranks or overpowers the other one, I mean, 99.9, the lesser is never going to out-physically be more powerful than the dominant person.
Which I think just goes back to the idea that, like, the whole allegory of, like, you're going to get your power through bullshit that you don't ever really have. But you have that, and we're going to let you think about that as we've absolved ourselves of any responsibility.
Right. Well, sure. And so what makes it kind of funny is the two women that Renfield kind of saves, right, is that he kills their boyfriends. But what I think is kind of funny, and not in a haha funny, but in a, like, that doesn't make sense, is that the way that they party, or the way they celebrate their freedom is by basically getting trashed.
Sure, maybe even hooking up, like, ambiguously kind of thing.
Yeah, it was a very, like, ambiguous, like, two girls free now because their boyfriends have disappeared. So they didn't even take their own power back and kick their boyfriends out.
Right.
Their boyfriends mysteriously disappeared, which we know. Which we know is Renfield killing off the boyfriends. And so it's still this unattainable, you didn't take your power back.
Right.
You didn't escape. You didn't stand up for yourself. Your boyfriend was murdered. And you're celebrating, by somebody else.
A man took care of you.
A man took care of you. And you're celebrating by getting completely trashed with your, like, maybe girlfriend from your support group.
Right, so, like, what I'm hearing is you got drunk at a party where you basically made yourself as weak as possible so the next predator can see a weak person and be like, and she's available?
And she's available. Renfield, come get my new boyfriend.
Right.
Yes. That's why I was like, well, that's stupid. Like,
right. I mean, like, I feel like in these movies they're trying to, like, do the new age message, but it's like it's just dumb at its sake. It's like we were watching Happy Death Day, which I don't want to do a full review of.
Right.
But it's like the part of the movie where she becomes a good person.
Oh, it's horrible.
Right.
Like, it was like, I'm going to turn a new leaf and be a good person. And then she's a good person by stealing somebody's sunglasses, littering, like, stealing somebody's pillow, like, doing all of these things. And you're like...
I gifted you something I stole from that guy.
Just gifted you something I stole. And I'm like, I literally remember saying out loud, she just littered. And she stole somebody's sunglasses. Like... How are you a good person?
Yeah, you just decided to be a good person, but you're so bad at it you don't really know how yet. Like,
just horrible.
Yeah, but that's what it kind of felt like with this. Is it's like nobody knows. It's like these writers, they want to write like a good message, but it's like they don't understand how the world or life works. So they're like, we're going to take away the toxic men, and like the toxic men in the movie are like for somehow like all the boyfriends knew each other. Which was also weird because both of them that were taken out were in the drug party.
Yeah.
Which was weird. So like not only are they quote unquote narcissists, but they're drug dealing, drug stealing, drug addicts
who hang out together
and listen to awful music.
While their girlfriends all unanimously go
to a support group. The same support group
to complain about said boyfriends.
Right, but the girlfriends can't do anything until they go missing, in which case they get drunk and hook up with randos.
Right.
Got it. So, I mean, like that's healthy. So, like, everyone out there take notes for how to, like, manage your life.
Yeah, because Renfield will come and save you.
Again, like, I think the movie's funny, but again, like, if you dissect any of the actual morals...
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I think that you can't find a moral person in Hollywood to actually give advice on, like, what you should do with your life.
No. Not at all.
Yeah, never.
No. I also told you, I really like the fact that the sisters were supposed to have this, like, really strong bond in that, like, our family was violated, right? Because the dad dies, and he's a victim of the mafia. Right. So the sisters are...
The cop girl. Like,
girl.
You need to introduce her.
Yeah, so the cop girl... has a sister, and the sisters are supposed to have this kind of like weird, contentious, but still sister. Like I've got you forever, and our family has been violated by the mafia, and you and I just handle it differently. But what really got me is that the sister never got named throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, you're really important. You sister,
you sister. Like I'm going to call my sister, and I'm like, well, what the heck is your sister's name? And she's not named until the literal last 2 minutes of the film.
You know what's so funny to me? It's like that when they were like doing the script, they're like, oh, we got to get some representation here. So they got the Asian girl.
Right.
And they got but it's also the people who are demanding representation for racist people who do the most racist shit.
Yes.
Like you sister, you who we can't name as a character because you're not a real person because you're Asian. You.
Yeah. And she's supposed to be really important because she like works for the FBI, but somehow she's just hanging out at the local.
Yeah, she has an office at the local police department where she babysits her sister because that's That's a thing. Like the FBI is like, oh, you've got family and a police. Oh, you need to babysit.
Yeah,
that's
like,
a thing.
That's the thing. We know that your family suffered an atrocity by the mob.
Right.
Y'all are really struggling and you need camaraderie, so we're just going to let you home base at the local PD.
Right.
Like,
that's the thing. That's the one who's supposed to be Nolans, and nobody has an accent. Not one fucking person has a Louisiana accent.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Not nobody.
Because I feel like this movie should have taken place in L.A.
That had a very LA vibe to it, and it was only when they were very pointed about it being New Orleans that I was like, oh. Well, look at that.
Because they go to like a voodoo bar.
Yeah.
But it's not like what you would actually find in like Louisiana Swamp Bayou. It's like a Louisiana themed bar in LA.
Yes. Like, and I really kept, and I even remember looking at the PD badges because I was trying to confirm, like, is this LA? And I kept being confused, like, why doesn't it say LA? And then I was like, and then it was like, oh, it's New Orleans.
Would it be NOPD? I don't know. I mean, like, I've been to New Orleans a few times, but I don't remember how the police work.
I don't know. But regardless, like, it has a very LA feel. And, yeah, that was a very kind of weird thing. But overall, I mean, from an entertainment standpoint,
yes,
I give it, like, 9 out of 10. Like, entertainment-wise, it was hilarious.
I wouldn't go quite so high, maybe 7.5. Like, I'm going to give that, like, a...
It's my type of movie.
3.5 star. 3.5 stars.
3.5? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very my type of movie, which is...
Right, like, I thought it was really funny, but, like, the reason why it's not a 4 is I don't want to rewatch it anytime soon. Like, I feel like it's one of those movies where in 4 or 5 years, if we had a friend over and they, like we were talking, we mentioned it, and somebody said they hadn't seen it, I'm like, it's been long enough.
Sure.
But I would more watch it for their reaction, because it's like, it's a comedy, so the problem with comedies is there's very few comedies that are funny, multiple views.
Yeah, multiple views.
And I don't think this would be one of them. It's too zany to, like, be something that's rewatchable multiple times. Whereas, I can watch the old 30s Universal movies on repeat. Sure. In perpetuity. Which
However, I will say, from, like, a family standpoint... Like, if I had a kid who wanted to watch this 3 or 4 or 5 times, I'd be like, all right.
Yeah, it's not atrocious. It's just not, like, something that has a high rewatch value for me.
Not adults.
Yeah.
Young adults to, like, teen...
You could do worse.
Tween teens, you could do a lot worse. Like, it's rather entertaining. And it really doesn't have anything...
It's violent.
It's violent.
It's blood jokes. It's gore jokes.
Well, I mean, it's a poop joke.
Yeah.
I mean,
gore and body
jokes.
Yeah, some bad language, but, like, there's nothing, like, where I feel like it violates, like, there's no sex.
No.
Like,
I mean, there's drugs, but it's...
But here's the thing.
Stupid.
It's the joke of drugs. There's no, like, strung out people or, like, consequences. It's just, like, you know, they're making jokes of, like, I'm caught with drugs, and, like...
Yeah, well, there is the one consequence when the 3 guys get murdered by Renfield for stealing the drugs, but it's a very, like, over-the-top...
Yeah, it's over-the-top. I wouldn't take any of it seriously. It's not bad. Like, I don't think there's any hard, like, lefty bullshit on it.
Nah. No, not really. I mean, the codependency thing, I kind of like that they were like, I like that they were like, don't be codependent.
Correct.
To the point that you don't have power.
They don't really give...
They don't give a good solution.
Right. Like, how do you not be codependent? Like,
well, you read a self-help book to your abuser is what you do.
Right. And then you learn to wire kung fu.
Yeah.
And apparently that is how you...
That's how you do that.
Yeah. And if you can't wire kung fu... then you haven't summoned the inner feminist Buffy person into your being. So what it really like and here's the thing, like, this is the last thing I'm going to say, is I feel people who have that as a mentality, like the Buffy mentality, what ends up happening is you get people who take out all that aggression on the nice guy that comes after. Like, the guy who isn't, like, because, like, they see, like, the narcissist that's the abuser, or, like, the next narcissist abuser.
They project it.
Right, they project it, so they're like, I'm obviously I'm not going to fuck with that guy, but it's like the nice guy who wants to help.
Yeah.
They fuck that dude.